So I'm going to actually review the development of Idelalisib, which is the first-in-class drug, PI3 kinase delta, which is approved in CLL and low-grade lymphoma. And the drug is really quite efficacious, but as we're aware, it has a number of toxicities that have proven harder to manage. And I've done some work in the context of previously untreated patients characterizing the autoimmune toxicities, which include hepatitis, pneumonitis, and colitis. And we found that those are associated with a significant decrease in T regulatory cells, actually within a month of patients initiating the drug. There are other toxicities as well, which include neutropenia and the possibility of opportunistic infections. And so use of Idelalisib is really currently limited to the relapsed refractory setting, usually after ibrutinib or in ibrutinib inappropriate or patients who stopped ibrutinib for adverse events. There are two other drugs that are in the pipeline. One is Duvelisib, which is a gamma delta inhibitor, which has a registration trial that hopefully will read out this year, in which it was randomized against ofatumumab in relapsed refractory CLL patients. That drug appears to have a relatively similar safety profile to Idelalisib, but in general, the studies have done a much better job of managing it prospectively. So there's been mandatory prophylaxis and more careful monitoring of blood counts. And so far there haven't been any untoward toxicity signals from that trial, and we'll look forward to hearing the efficacy later this year. The newest drug on the block is one called TGR-1202, which has been built as a next-generation PI3 kinase delta inhibitor. It does have a somewhat different structure from Idelalisib and Duvelisib, which are somewhat similar. The issue with TGR is that we're still awaiting pharmacodynamic data in patients that demonstrate that it actually inhibits PI3 kinase delta. And recently some data have come out indicating that it also inhibits casein kinase 1 epsilon. And not that much has been known about casein kinase 1 epsilon, but at this meeting there's actually a poster suggesting that casein kinase 1 epsilon itself might be a potential therapeutic target in CLL, in which they use a drug that specifically targets casein kinase 1 delta and epsilon. So I think the target that might be relevant in CLL for TGR-1202 is not completely clear and hasn't been fully demonstrated. We are still awaiting the publication of the CLL paper. Response rates in the limited number of patients at the high doses achieved in the phase 1 appeared to be good. Lower doses not as good. And durability is still pending. So they have initiated phase 3 trials, but I feel there are still many questions about the exact mechanism of the drug. I can say, though, that the data appear fairly convincing that the adverse event profile is better than it was with Idelalisib. Now, that may be because delta is not really being inhibited and or because there's a different target. Efficacy data, I think, are still pending. We have too few patients and not enough follow-up to really know. So still a lot of questions about that drug, but does seem to have a different safety profile.